becoming more and more common that doctors actually acknowledge this condition and are willing to screen for it. But just because there is not a positive finding on one of the tests that are given right now in standard practice doesn't preclude the presence of Lyme, because there's so many different co-infections associated with the disease that aren't screened for in standard clinical tests.
So if that happens with somebody, what's the next step for them? So they're essentially being told it's not Lyme. So now they're probably going to be told we're going to look for something else. But if I'm understanding you correctly, that's a false negative.
Correct.
Okay. So what might be the next question for that person?
Well, I think it's really understanding your body and understanding the symptoms that you're having, and then figuring out, is there an alternative outside of the standard medical practice? There are a number of physicians now that work outside the medical groups that really specialize in Lyme treatment. So it's worth exploring.
Mm-hmm. So where would they go to explore?
They would typically want to join a Lyme support group.
Mm-hmm.
In Wisconsin they have Wisconsin Lyme, which you can join on Yahoo, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of the doctors like to keep a low profile because of how the medical boards sort of treat
Sure.
many of these providers that they would consider rogue.
Mm-hmm.
And so they would want to explore that by talking to some of these people in these groups.
Okay.
And sort of understanding where to go for help.
Right. Yeah. I think it's important that people know they have somebody in their corner, right? I'm sure you felt lonely, isolated, nowhere else to turn. Obviously, it sounds like your mom was, there to support you, but maybe if you could share some of that part of it too. What was that like, just emotionally, going through that?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a horrible illness to go through. I was lucky personally that my parents were so supportive of my recovery and my treatment, because I know for a fact that if I wouldn't have had them supporting me emotionally with everything, I probably would have given up. It's very common for advanced stage Lyme patients to actually end their own lives.
Mm-hmm.
It's not uncommon. So I was very fortunate to have them. But I also think that you need to potentially look at having other advocates for you, whether it be spirituality or counseling, other things to sort of improve your mind. And it's as much psychological of a battle as it is physical.
Yep.
And so you do need a very good support network, whether it be other professionals or family members or close friends.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important that you have maybe an advocate that even understands Lyme and has been through it.
Mm-hmm.
So the support groups
It's
can
huge.
oftentimes be
Yeah.
a good step in really understanding and taking those steps in recovery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It helps to know you're not crazy. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, what you're dealing with is very real, even though it may not appear real, from the outside in. It's a real struggle, that you're going through.
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah. So you're well now, which is great, and you have living a vibrant life, which is great. So, given that all the lessons learned from that, how does that relate to, like, you're in business, you help people with establishing sound financial plans. You're a musician. How do you meet those things when you're dealing with people or interacting with people now?
Sure. Well, so I think that going through the Lyme struggle has really helped me become a better person, in that I've developed a lot more empathy and patience.
Mm-hmm.
because it took a lot of patience to get through that.
Yeah.
and and it's really helped me in my career, because now what I do is I help people plan financially for their future, and oftentimes that entails, planning for that unexpected illness or maybe loss of somebody in your family. And so being somebody that, basically went through job loss, financial ruin, and a major disruptive illness, I think has really made me a patient, understanding person, and I can really be an advocate for my clients and the people that I work with.
Right. Yeah. It's amazing how, when you're in the midst of that darkness, the isolation and the loneliness, how you can turn that into a blessing, ultimately, like you said. And I can see in your face, how much, that empathy that you talk about is there, and it's, I think it's really important that people know that they are cared for, no matter what.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It's really important, I think, in life to have people that are genuine and sincere, and I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned through this health struggle is you appreciate people.
Yeah.
And you take care of them, and I think people really appreciate sincerity.
Right. And that we are meant to be connected, right? We, trying to do it on our own, probably not going to succeed as well. If you're trying to live in isolation, or if you choose to isolate yourself.
Yeah, another thing that I've seen is common with Lyme patients is that many of them do feel completely isolated,
Right.
because they don't know where to go.
Exactly.
And the unfortunate reality is you're probably not going to get a lot of empathy from the medical community. And in general, most people don't understand how debilitating this illness is. Like if you take cancer, for example, everybody's been touched by cancer in some way. And so there's sort of a general understanding about maybe what somebody's going through. But with Lyme, it's one of those things where somebody can look perfectly well on the surface, but they may not be well. And so I think that that's why it's so important to have somebody that's maybe been through it or really understands it sort of in your court.
Right. Because it can be ongoing. For you, it took how many years, right, before you even found somebody?
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right. It can be a very long process, and it's not necessarily a something that you just get treatment for and recover overnight.
Right.
It's a multifaceted sort of treatment regimen.
Yeah. So you kind of come out of the fog gradually.
Yeah, I'd say every day. If you feel a little better, you're probably making progress.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, people actually regress sometimes when they're going through treatment.
Sure.
And they'll feel worse. But what you find is that those positive days start to weigh out over those negative days.
Right. Yeah. Well, do you have any other final thoughts? Is there anything I haven't asked that you think would be important for somebody to hear or to see or to understand before we close this out?
Well, thank you, Jude, for having me, of course.
Yeah.
This has been really an honor to be able to do this.
Well, thank you.
And I do think that for someone who's impacted by Lyme disease, whether it be a friend or a family member, know that there is hope out there. It just may take some time, and you need to be an advocate for yourself. And I'd say surround yourself with positive people that can lift you up, and really don't give up, because it is a devastating illness, but you will come out of it if you get the right sort of resources and have the right sort of support.
Well, I'm so happy for you. I appreciate you so much for sharing your story. You know, a lot of times these things are very personal, and you know, there's a lot of, I guess, hurt that precedes all the health that comes out afterwards. So this is very intimate, and I appreciate you, sharing with us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I'll be posting this on the website, and we look forward to having you share your comments, share your updates, and of course, please like and share all of this content to those